Hello everybody for a quick check-in. It's going to be a busy morning. We've got orientation at the juvenile facility this morning. So we've already been, I went earlier this week on Monday when I got back to do the orientation at the adult facility. So I will be going in to do peer support at the adult facility, and now we'll actually officially go through the orientation for the juvenile facility to be listed as volunteers, which means that our reentry program, as well as the other things we're doing individually, like I'm going to be sitting on DBT classes for the juvenile facility, we'll be able to do that. Because up to this point, every time I've gone in to volunteer at the facility, it had to be, you get like 2 free visits without being official, and then you have to get a dispensation. So the superintendent's been giving me a dispensation every time I go in. Good morning, young. At this point, I'll actually be listed, so we'll be able to start doing it regularly, because we want to make sure these services are available. So I'm excited about that. And it's just been one of those kind of crazy nonstop days, and on the phone with the electric company, because they double billed me for the last place that I was living. And then they say they issued the check. It took like 3 calls, and then they say they issued the check, but it still hasn't arrived, and just, chaos in a normal way. Yeah, but I want to say cheers to everyone. And just different weird things that have been coming up. When people were sending gifts or kind of like housewarming things, at first I felt really awkward with that. And then people were asking me to, put together a wish list. So I did. And then people were accusing me of being like selfish or dishonest or somehow manipulating people. And I was like, well, shit, like I always try to be accountable. I try to see if I am. And I've had a number of people say, hey, thank you for letting me help. That made me feel good, or that made me feel good to be able to see that item or see what I gave. And I was like, okay, well, thank you, I guess. And I just noticed that life seems to be this constant balance of like taking criticism and being accountable and trying to figure out what makes sense, but also not letting other people dictate my life, because it's really easy to go to either direction. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see people having their coffee. This is my second cup of coffee as well. But yeah, really trying to make sure that I'm focusing on the important things and the right things. So we just had a big board meeting for the nonprofit. We're spinning off some different things. So we want to continue to do direct reentry services. We also know that there are other groups doing direct reentry services. So what we can do is maybe highlight or amplify their message. So we're going to start doing a media thing. We're going to highlight the individual struggles of people getting out and really show, what that is, what that experience is, because people don't respond to statistics. They don't care about numbers and details, but they want to know about, actual experience, actual human experience. That's why, like, if you look at the American Red Cross or one of these, Feed the Hungry, they don't give you numbers. They show you a starving child. They show you someone suffering. Or the SPCA shows you a dog. So I'm hoping that if we can show these human stories, it'll make a difference. Then I also want to highlight the groups and organizations that are doing good work, that are changing lives, that are giving people hope and resources. So if we can do that, we can either highlight the models that make sense, or we can, highlight, what seems to be working, but somebody else can step in and say, hey, we're doing this better. Like, why don't you try this? Again, it's just about a spread of like information and connection. One of the other things, talking about accountability, somebody said this morning, like, hey, it's really great that you're advocating for people who are getting out of prison, but what about victims? Like, we need more victims advocates. And that's something I really agree with. I think it's tremendously unfortunate that we have this false dichotomy that you're either pro-victim or pro-criminal justice reform. To me, criminal justice reform is about making sure that people who've been harmed by crimes have resources and have support and have what they need. And right now, what we have doesn't do that. We have a system that says, hey, like, you hurt somebody, so we're not going to like focus on helping the person who's been hurt. We're going to focus on punishing you, which doesn't really help the person who's been hurt. It's one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of restorative justice and some of the local models that are being done, because they're saying, okay, the focus needs to be on healing harm. So like, we're going to focus on making sure that the person who was hurt has the resources they need. We're going to give them support or counseling or whatever that is. We're going to make sure their voice is heard. We're also going to make sure that the person who did the harm gets with the resources they need to make sure they can change. Because people don't just wake up in the morning and be like, I just want to go hurt somebody today, or I just want to go rob a store, or I just want to go commit, whatever. What we found is that hurt people, people lacking resources, lacking coping, skills, lacking something fundamental are the ones who cause the most harm. And until that issue is addressed, it doesn't really change. It's kind of like the issue of substance abuse disorder. So if we have someone who is using substances and never gets to the core of it, if they stop smoking crack, well, they might start drinking. If they stop drinking, they might start eating too much. The underlying issue hasn't been addressed, and that's what we're trying to look to doing with criminal justice, as well as really in general. Like, wellness in general is about addressing people's needs and giving them the tools to address their own needs. The other thing that has come up a lot is the idea of being selfish or like focused on self. Because to me, it's all about community. Like, we all have to lift each other up, and we can't do it alone. And this kind of narrative about, like, oh, he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. Well, no, like, nobody pulls himself up by their bootstraps. Or if they are, they're a rather rare individual. Almost everyone I know has been successful in tandem with other people. They've had mentors, they've had peers who've helped guide them, and some have been cutthroat and are miserable people and are unhappy. But most of those people have worked together, and we do far better together, the whole idea of like collaborative capitalism, than we do apart. I don't know, just things I've been thinking about today. But I'm also exhausted. You know, this past weekend was really rough with my grandpa, and then just kind of trying to get everything done and in, and make sure that I have everything together, because I'm going to South by Southwest. So I leave, what's today? Thursday? I leave tomorrow. So it'll be 10 days in Austin. So I'm looking forward to that, and we have a bunch of meetings. I'm meeting Marcy and Carrie, who are good friends out there. And I'm looking forward to that because Marcy's really well connected in the reform community in Texas, especially in Austin. So she's going to show me a reentry program we're hoping to highlight that does really good work. We're hoping to connect with some other local resources. I literally just had a text exchange with somebody who lives in New York who's like in Austin, but is like flying out the day that I get back. But yeah, trying to connect with people in the space and continue to tell stories, but also really like just meet people. Sometimes I need that personally. I just need some time to be around people and kind of rejuvenate, because running nonstop doesn't always work very well. But I'm really grateful for these opportunities. This is not something I ever imagined could happen. And I'm excited because, again, the fact that I get to do these things, the fact that I get to go places and I get to meet people is something I never imagined. And speaking at South by Southwest, literally on the 19th month anniversary of getting out of prison, just seems fortuitous. I don't even know what that seems. It seems bizarre. Because I remember when I was inside realizing that I wanted to tell stories, or that I wanted to write, or that I wanted to speak. But in my mind, that was like speaking in the gymnasium to a bunch of people. It was a very limited thing. I never imagined it would be filling the Boston Public Library, or doing a stage at South by Southwest. But I'm really excited for it. And Jerry, I do hope we can get together. Yeah, I'd love to check out the reentry program at Peoria, Illinois. There are a bunch of really good models around the country. Like I've had a couple calls with CEO Works or Center for Employment Opportunities, and they do a geographic model, which I think is really interesting, because they stop just saying, okay, we're going to help everybody across the board. They make sure there are wraparound services in one area. So the day somebody gets out, they get connected with work immediately. They work for the city doing, beautification or basic maintenance or something. So they have a job from day one that gives them some structure and also gives them some money. While they're working that job, they're getting training, they're getting the skills they need, they're being connected so they can move into a career. They can move into something that's sustainable. And then I think it's 6 weeks out, there's like this transition period where they help them transition into a real career, like a sustainable career. And I think this should be a model that's even broader and more across the board. It doesn't just have to be people getting out of prison. We have a local network to work group that does this for people regardless of their circumstance. If they're leaving an abusive relationship, if they're getting out of prison, if they're just trying to change things in their lives. And what we found is, people often lack the resources to even go out and find that help because they're working so many low-paying jobs, or they're just kind of like struggling to survive. They don't even have the time to go out and find those resources. So the more we can advertise them, the more they want. And I don't know if anybody knows about this. In our reentry class last night, we were talking about one of our guys who I really like this kid. I mean, he is just a great kid. And I started talking about AmeriCorps and wondering if AmeriCorps would allow people with a criminal record to join. And apparently they do. And not only that, they have some kind of mentorship program. I had never seen this until just in the course of the reentry class last night. It came up and we started talking about it. So I'm interested in looking into that because in a way, there's this whole idea of like the hero's journey, especially as a teenager, like leaving our safe, known life, like whatever that is, and going out to do something different. So whether we're going to the military or going to AmeriCorps or going to, work overseas or volunteer, I think it can have such a huge impact to meet people from all these different areas, to meet people who have different perspectives and different ideas and go do different things. Because if I've only grown up around people who work in fast food, well, I don't know anything about being a mechanic or being a nuclear scientist or being whatever, and I'm never going to know unless I go out and explore those people and do those things. But, my sister kind of did that. She was in college and she had this personal tragedy happen, and then she ended up going and living at the beach in the summer and living at in Colorado in the winter and just being like a beach bum and like working in restaurants and doing stuff. And it's not that I necessarily think that that's going to be the happiest life overall, but I think especially when we're young and we're trying to figure out what we like, being able to meet different people and have different experiences and struggle and also succeed is one of the most valuable things we can do. And that's why I'm so grateful for travel, because all the places I've been going, one of the things I do is I look up the cost of living. Like I go on like Facebook Marketplace and look for rooms for rent or houses to rent. Say, okay, could I afford to live here? And in New York or in California, it's obviously a lot harder, but some places are more affordable. I also then try to talk to people. Like, what is your daily experience? Like, what is your social scene? Like, where do you go? Because in many ways, I feel like I'm just newborn. Like, I don't know what I'm doing in the world. So meeting people and getting their experiences. And like, I went out the other night. I go to trivia a lot of nights. And they were like, hey, do you want to come out with us afterwards? And I was like, man, it's bedtime. What are you talking about? I got to bed at 9 o'clock. But I thought it was important to get out and see the way other people live and do whatever they're doing, like have these experiences, kind of expand my own perspective, because I realize it's rather limited. And I've enjoyed that. But I know I've got to get ready and go to the juvenile facility for this orientation, and I'm excited about that. And we've got a bunch of members of the violence interruption unit. They're going to show up today. And God, there's just a constant reminder, because one of the members had a family member who was killed. And it wasn't a kid who was like in the life, who was doing something. It was whatever. He was literally just going outside to smoke a cigarette, and he caught a stray bullet. And I think about those struggles and the struggles of, coming out of incarceration and going into poverty and not necessarily having that support and those resources. I think it's incredibly difficult. And I try to remember on a daily basis, especially when I'm speaking to people getting out, that I had just incredible good fortune. And I had resources and support both on the inside and the outside that other people didn't. And I really want to make sure to highlight that. And I really want to figure out a way to share that and spread that. Like last night, one of the guys in the group, I asked him, I said, what do you think the biggest hurdle or thing that's keeping you from going to school or following this dream? And finally I asked him, have you ever seen anybody take this kind of risk and be successful? And he said, no. I said, do you have a role model? Do you have somebody he looks up to who you can look to for advice or a good way to live? And he said, no. And I think about that. If I grew up in a place where nobody owned their own business, where everybody just went to work at one job to get money from them to pay money to somebody else, if life was a daily survival, if I didn't have role models, if I didn't have people kind of guiding me and giving me opportunities, life would be a lot harder. So I've been fortunate from the beginning. I've been fortunate while I was in, and I've been fortunate since getting out. And if we can make those connections, and that's the other part of the nonprofit, or the pilot of the nonprofit we're looking at, is a mentorship network, whether a formal network or literally just a Rolodex to say, hey, you're getting out and you're going to need help navigating, because we needed help navigating, because everybody needs help navigating. Let's connect you with this person who's a doctor. Let's connect you with this person who's a lawyer. Let's connect you with this guy who owns a body shop. And let's give you a different slice of life. And also let's connect you with somebody who can answer questions like, hey, here's why it's probably not the best idea to go to a payday lender. Or, hey, this is what I do when it's tax time, when I have to figure out how to do this. Or, hey, if you're looking for this, here's where you can get a deal on cars. Here's an organization that will provide cars to people with, oh, I got a weird message, who do not have traditional opportunities. Or just connecting people, because I'm out here in the nonprofit space, and there's so many groups that I don't know about. So many groups that I'm learning about on a regular basis. Like I said, the thing with AmeriCorps. AmeriCorps is a big national program, and I had no idea that they have a mentorship program for people getting out of long-term incarceration. That's huge. That is the dream of what to do. So now I got to figure out how to contact them and connect with them, because I'm realizing that, recreating or replicating services that are already being done doesn't really make sense. And then trying to compete, because you see that sometimes in the nonprofit world where people are competitive over fundraising or competitive over, man, I don't care who gets it. I just want the support to be there. I want people to have the same chances that I have, and I want people to succeed, as well or more than I have, because it doesn't make sense to say that these people can and these people can't. What does somebody say? It would be great if I could help the youth on probation in the foster care system in California. That's an interesting one. So there's a college program. So California just gave $15 million to helping provide higher education to people in the juvenile facility or the juvenile system. So somebody contacted me from a community college out there, and they've had a really successful program. They've had an amazing thing going on, and it's something I want to get involved in. He keeps trying to talk me to move out to San Bernardino so I can go work there. And maybe I will. Maybe that's in the future, but that's really where it is. It's the mentorship programs. Larry Lawton's one who does it. He's got a youth mentorship program, and I haven't obviously been a part of it because I'm not sure what everything is like, but those make such a big difference. There's one locally called Love No Ego. There's a group called Uhuru. And I think it really helps when people who have lived experience or come from the same neighborhoods or look the same as somebody can say, hey, these are the struggles, it's real, but you're valuable enough to get through it. You're strong enough to get through it, and I'm going to be going through it with you. Because so often, and the most heartbreaking stories I heard in prison were people coming out of the foster care system who had just been mistreated or just denigrated or just basically told that they were worthless. And there's so many people in our community on a regular basis that are told that they don't have any value. And it's not even just necessarily they're told by words, although some people are explicit. It's that nobody's ever showed them love or ever showed them care. And when nobody does, that is getting the message that you don't matter, you're not valuable, there's no reason for you to be here. And that has an impact on people. The example I always use is we had a shooting at UVA, and 4 UVA students were killed. And the whole city shut down. There were moments of silence. There were businesses closed down in their honor. The entire city shut down to honor these 4 people. The kid who got shot on First Street the week before, on Prospect the week before, nobody shut the city down for him. Nobody shut the city down to say that he mattered. Like, none of the people from the community showed up at his funeral. And that's the difference. Because that kid is being told, and all the kids in that neighborhood are being told, hey, you don't actually matter. You're not as important as a college kid. Like, you're not as important as this guy who's a football player. And that resonates with people. Like, that sticks to people. And until we until we start to value everyone and every life, it's just not going to matter. But, all right, well, I've rambled on. I'm on my coffee, getting ready to go to the juvenile facility and looking forward to it. And then we have meetings the rest of the day. Then we go to Austin tomorrow. So wish me luck, and hopefully I'll see some of you there. I know Jerry said you're going to be there. Actually, I got a number of people I got to try to meet. And I actually might even have some day passes. So if there are people that are in Austin that do not have South by Southwest passes but want to come see me speak on the 16th, let me know. I might be able to hook you up. All right, bye.